Welcome back to your latest industry recap. Potential Boeing orders to be cancelled, 787 grounding updates, and Air Tahiti Nui in a battle for survival. Want to begin with Copa Airlines, currently evaluating their future portfolio of Boeing aircraft, which includes the 737 MAX, amid ongoing delays. The carrier, based in Panama, is in a position where the likelihood of acting on more than a dozen options that would result in orders for the 737-10 remains unlikely as each day passes. The airline's chief executive spoke with Flight Global and said that taking the 737-10 was absolutely not a guarantee at this stage. With the 737-8 and 737-9, two models it is already delighted with. For Copa Airlines, and like many other companies, there's a great desire not to complicate the fleet further than necessary. Adding more variants, even if within the same overall aircraft family, does have the ability to do this. Copa Airlines' order for the 737-10 has been a long-standing one. It was made over 8 years ago, but we know still the variant remains uncertified. While Copa Airlines analyses the future of its fleet, which may include a possible move to cancel orders in favour of streamlining, there can be several reasons for such a decision. However, for Copa Airlines and other customers of the 737 MAX program and its variants more specifically, the persistent delays in the certification do play a role in decision making. The most recent hopes would have seen approval for the two remaining variants by the end of this year, allowing for the delivery of the long-awaited first units, then following a first scheduled passenger flight. However, according to latest reports, the 737-10, the aircraft I'm taking a look at today in question, will not be approved until 2026 at the earliest, resulting in further delays for airlines as they await delivery of this aircraft type. For airlines looking to leverage these variants for their future operations, well, the delays can evoke a range of decisions. Still, arguably the biggest would be to walk away from the variant that was initially ordered in favour of other programs or other approved variants within the family. Obviously, if they stick with Boeing, that's a great move, but it is still not the aircraft they initially purchased with a reason in mind. At least for Copa Airlines, they want to ensure greater fleet commonality. So the inability to acquire these planes may have presented a new opportunity to actually evaluate their current aircraft to develop and formulate strategies moving forward that may not include the high-capacity model. Over to the next story, and Kenya Airways hopes to have all of its currently grounded 787s returning to service by the end of 2026. The hope is part of the carrier's broader ambition to expand its overall fleet and move forward in a more positive direction. Talk around the airline is hopeful that the return to service of the Boeing 787s will come after a lengthy period where these jets have been parked for necessary maintenance. However, with supply chains presenting their fair share of issues over recent years, the timeframe for the return of these aircraft has ballooned, significantly impacting the airline's day-to-day operations. As a result of the 787 groundings, where 3 of this type had been on the ground, Kenya Airways reported a loss of $94 million across the first half of the year. Importantly, this represents a negative turnaround from the profit during the first half of 2024, but that is when the groundings were not affecting its day-to-day operation. At times, 1/3 of the 787's fleet at the airline were grounded, and revenue from passengers has remained one of the biggest concerns throughout the year, as the situation did not improve across the first half. The airline's CEO had previously warned in March that the Easter period would bring financial pressure, alongside an inability to operate its typical long-haul schedule due to the smaller active fleet. Securing the necessary spare engines for the planes to return to service, as well as maintaining the existing engines to meet the required maintenance, has been an industry-wide problem, with adverse effects varying depending on each respective operator's circumstances. The latest available fleet data indicates that Kenya Airways currently has 2 787-8s parked, with 7 units listed as active, totaling 9. Despite the struggles with the 787 fleet, Kenya Airways remains optimistic that things will begin to improve across the coming year, with the hope that the aircraft, like I said, will be fully operational by the time 2027 arrives. The company is also seeking to secure capital to boost in the first quarter of 2026, where they're gunning for around $500 million at a minimum. The capital would allow the airline to address some of the expansion work it wants to undertake, which includes a focus on renewing and growing the fleet in the coming years. With shareholder approval required, it's set to be a busy next 18 months for this airline, which has copped a pretty tough beating in the first half of the year. Over to Air Tahiti Nui, who is facing a fight for survival, for without fundamental change, the future of the business will not be secure. A company study conducted by key consulting firm Arthur D. Little and presented to Air Tahiti on the 7th of July reveals that significant issues are present in the business. The key highlight was the overall operation of the airline and the established route network, with only one being profitable, that was Papeete to Los Angeles. Ultimately, having just one profitable route is far from optimal, and if it were to continue, it would have a disastrous consequence across the airline. Moving forward, the report presents suggestions to the board of directors in an effort to develop a more optimal solution to medium to long-term problems. Additionally, the changes aim to find ways to halt the chronic losses, which are hindering the airline's progress, resulting in billions of francs being lost, while also seeking ways to boost tourism to the region. With only one route profitable, flying to Seattle and Tokyo were also bleeding money. The study points directly towards low ticket prices and an immobilization of crew on the site, dropping productivity levels. Another key concern for these two markets is the low flight occupancy rates, which do not exceed 50%, highlighting further poor utilization of available assets across the network towards markets that have little to no demand and simply do not work. Arthur D. Little is therefore suggesting the carrier finds ways to fly towards markets that are already dynamic and come from the largest possible source markets, which have a good image of the Polynesia region and are accessible via a direct flight, could be served once or twice a week. That includes further deepening services across the west coast and looking towards the Oceania, which are viewed as the targets for primary optimization of the network. Let me know your thoughts on any of the stories down below in the comments. Thanks for watching, take care, be safe, and I'll see you tomorrow.